To view Azure SQL Managed Identity, you need to follow a series of steps that involve understanding what Managed Identity is and how it works with Azure SQL. Managed Identity is a feature in Azure Active Directory that allows Azure resources to authenticate to other Azure resources without needing credentials. First, you need to enable Managed Identity for your Azure SQL database. This can be done by navigating to the Azure portal, selecting your Azure SQL database, and clicking on the Identity option under the Settings section. Once you are in the Identity section, toggle the status to On and click Save to enable Managed Identity. After enabling Managed Identity, you will be assigned a Client ID and an Object ID. The Object ID is the unique identifier for your Managed Identity and can be used to grant access to other Azure resources. To view the Managed Identity for your Azure SQL database, you can use the Azure portal or Azure CLI. In the Azure portal, navigate to your Azure SQL database and click on the Identity option. Here you will see the Client ID and Object ID for your Managed Identity. Alternatively, you can use the Azure CLI command as SQLDB-show to view the Managed Identity for your Azure SQL database. This command will return a JSON object that includes the Client ID and Object ID for your Managed Identity. It is also possible to view the Managed Identity for your Azure SQL database using PowerShell. You can use the Get Azure SQL database CMD let to return an object that includes the Managed Identity information. Best practices for using Managed Identity with Azure SQL include always enabling Managed Identity for new Azure SQL databases, using the least privilege principle when granting access to other Azure resources, and regularly reviewing and updating the access granted to your Managed Identity. By following these steps and best practices, you can effectively view and manage the Azure SQL Managed Identity for your Azure SQL databases. This helps to improve the security and management of your Azure resources by avoiding the need to manage credentials and reducing the risk of credential exposure.